Hope everybody's doing well. I am just getting Instagram set up. It's kind of funny. Instagram doesn't allow for streaming service to broadcast to their live thing. So you got to go through like a third party sort of workaround. And you can also only do it while you're live. So every time at the beginning of these things, there's always just this little awkward silence. Or this awkward time where I'm trying to figure this stuff out. Anyway, the last few days, I haven't been online. And that's just because on Thursday, I had like 6 hours of online meetings and whatnot. And then Friday, my whole morning was filled with some meetings as well. And then I basically felt like I needed a bit of a, digital detox or something like that. So spent some time offline and just away from things. And then Monday, I took advantage of the American holiday and got to discuss some things with some of my American friends down there. Anyway, something that came up or that I was asked about on Thursday was this idea of kind of like, how do you manage work-life balance? Like, it's a really easy thing to sort of talk about or, think that you have. But one of the things that came up, and this was the meetings with some animation studio people, and it was pretty interesting because their idea of work-life balance was just not what work-life balance really is. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how to manage that. And that's basically what I was asked. And before I get into that, I'm going to pop this up. So if you've got questions or topics that you would like me to cover, you can actually send your questions to my email address there. It should be on the screen. Feel free to send me anything, and I will go over it as best I can. So we'll kind of get into it today. So how do you manage work-life balance? Well, one thing I think businesses need to understand is that, having work-life balance isn't having like a ping pong table at work. That's just something cool that happens to be at work. All right. Work-life balance really comes out of understanding what your purpose is as a business and hiring people who sort of fall in line with what your core values are. It comes out of the business and culture of working towards whatever your purpose is. So, and that includes the individual as well. So that's going to include the employee. So if their purpose and their sort of core values match up with the business and their purpose and their core values, you're going to find work-life balance a lot easier. It sort of will naturally flow out of that sort of relationship. And, here's why. If you can find something you love to do, or you can find a way to love what you do, you'll never really have to work a day in your life. Your career basically becomes part of your daily life. And that's really important. And it's important to understand the difference there of, doing what you love versus loving what you do. Quite often, like at the gym for sure, we get a lot of people who apply for a job and they think, if I could just work at the, I love working out. I don't like going to the job that I currently have. But if I could work at a fitness facility, I'd be a lot happier at work. And what they don't see is the amount of work that actually goes into that sort of behind the scenes. They see the front desk staff happily greeting everybody. They see the maybe the sales team, talking with members and that sort of thing. They see the personal trainers out there having a good time with their clients. But what they don't see, they don't see the front desk having to deal with like the 200 complaints that they're going to get. They don't see the front desk having, the 200 complaints that they're going to get throughout their, their 4-hour work shift, or they don't see like the 500 phone calls that are being made by the sales team. And they don't see the trainers who are working through all the problems that their clients might have. Maybe they twisted an ankle, or maybe they didn't eat breakfast and now they don't feel good while they're working out. They don't see that end of it. And they don't quite understand how much work really goes into those jobs. And it ends up becoming something where it becomes almost too big a task for them to also do what they're, trying to do what they're loving, right? It might be a better option to actually find a way to love what you're doing. So find a way to make your job more enjoyable. That could be more beneficial for you, and that could create a bit better balance in your work and life. So when you go to work and you're happy working at your career or your job, you're going to come home happy. You're going to end up having good days and great days. Not that every day is going to be perfect, but if you do have a rough day at work, it's important to sort of move past that. Now, when you come home, you don't want to take out that bad day on the rest of your family or the people that you're living with, whether it be a roommate or whatever it is that's going to create a problem at home. But I think of it like a pitcher in baseball. When a pitcher throws a ball and the batter hits it out of the yard, they don't think about that last pitch that was just, hit for a home run. They actually think about the next pitch that's coming and how they can make that better. And the really good pitchers are really good at moving on from a mistake, or moving on from, say, a bad pitch or a bad day and into the next one. Now, they'll go back and talk about it with their coaches and whatnot, but they're not going to hang themselves up on that. The other thing you want to think about is, are you surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals? If you're around people who are, again, in line with your overall purpose and are sharing your core values, you're going to have a much better time at work, in which case you're going to find that work-life balance a lot easier. Now, one strategy to help sort of define work-life balance is to understand that you can kind of have it all. You just can't have it all at the same time. So what you want to do is take all the important aspects of your life and you want to rank order them. And once you've rank ordered them, you want to quantify them. And it's important to understand that rank ordering, so that ordering of what's important, is going to change. It's going to change throughout the week. It's going to change throughout the course of a month, a year, and over the course of your life as well, as your life is kind of developing. And you want to look at a few different categories. And I like to look at these as sort of healthy systems. So the first one would be something like your career health and your job health. So a bit of a distinction there between a career and a job. One example might be that, a career is sort of the overall picture of where you want to be an expert in, and a job is something that is kind of something that you're doing that's going to help you along the way. An example would be a waitress working at a restaurant while she's going through college, or somebody who is, maybe working at a coffee shop on their way to something more meaningful in their life. Not that those jobs aren't meaningful, but a job is something that's sort of going to help you along the path. The other thing I look at is, personal health. So both physical and mentally, am I exercising and doing physical activities? What and how much of that am I doing? The other thing to think about while you're ordering these things is, is one thing impeding something else? Like, there was certainly a time in my life where I was working out way too much and doing way too much physical activity, and it was getting in the way of my career. The other thing you want to think about is your social health. Are you giving yourself time to be with friends? Personal development, are you trying to get better at what you're doing or just staying the same? You can look at economic health. That's sort of like your savings versus debt ratio. And then as well, like family health. Are there relationships in your family that could be hindering or that could be improved? Certainly, if you're coming home to a poor family situation, that's going to be something you're going to want to work on. So you might want to think about ranking some of these things as to what's most important for you, and then giving them a second ranking, maybe out of 5. And, if you're a 5 out of 5 on the physical health, but your mental health is suffering, that's going to be something to address. If you're a 5 out of 5 on personal health, but your career is like a 2 out of 5, well, then maybe you can take some of the time you're allowing for your physical health and apply some of that time to your career so that maybe you're getting like a 4 and a 3 out of that. Same with personal development. You don't want to be staying the same. You want to be constantly learning and developing in the career that you'd like to have, and you need to allow a time for that as well. And it's important to understand that you may not have a sort of that 5 out of 5 star rating on all of them, but the aim is that over the course of a year or over the course of a given time frame that you will achieve 5 out of 5. So most people tend to give themselves too short a time frame to work with when trying to balance work and life. They think about it as too much day to day. So they think, well, if I worked 8 hours today, I get to have time for life, for 8 hours as well. And it just doesn't compute. It's not a transactional thing. We need to think of them like much larger than day to day. I mean, it could be the case where you're able to achieve that over a week, maybe a year even, maybe months, but definitely over the course of your life, you want to have a really good balance at that. And what we're kind of getting into is an example where, if you're building a business, you're going to have to spend a lot of time doing that, in which case maybe your family life is going to, come down to a 2 or 3 or a 1 even, because you're doing like a 5 out of 5 on your career. That's not going to be forever. It's just going to be until that business gets started. And then you can refocus and kind of buy back some of your time. This idea of work-life balance comes up when we're doing interviews all the time. And every single person who brings that up, I always ask them to define that. What do they mean by work-life balance? And I can say that 100% of the people who have interviewed with us and have answered with something that was a day-to-day answer, we have not hired them. And it's because it becomes transactional. So you end up getting an employee who will come back early from lunch and then try to leave early at the end of the day, which is fine as long as it's not happening all the time now. Or you'll get somebody who works late one day and then they think, well, on Friday, I'm going to leave early, right? Because I've got the weekend off. And it becomes a problem because it leads to poor relationships at work. An example might be, when somebody comes in, whoever's scheduled after that person, and that person's not there, and they ask, "Oh, where's Ray?" And you're like, "Well, Ray came back from lunch early, so we let him go early today at the end of the day." And then, the person who comes in is like, "Oh, is that something we can do?" The answer is no, it's not. But the problems become you've created this culture of this transactional experience where it's like, well, I put in extra time here, so I'm going to take it away from there. And if you're scheduling, if you're in charge of scheduling, you've really got a problem on your hands. So managing work-life balance is more about kind of managing all the aspects in your life that matter to you and that matter to the people around you. So you want to think about that. It's not just a selfish thing. It's also about, maybe the family that you're living with, or it could be your roommates, or it could be the people who are closest to you. If you're always at work, your friends are not going to be able to see you as much, and that could be a problem. So once you master that, once you master this idea of kind of rank ordering the aspects of your life that are important to you and the people around you, you're going to end up finding your balance. And again, it's really all about the overall balance of your life rather than a work-life balance. During this meeting, one of the other problems that came up, or one of the other questions that we tackled, was this idea of how to create culture in a virtual or digital workspace. So it's been really interesting over the course of the lockdown, shutdown, quarantine, whatever you want to call it, because businesses, particularly I mean, fitness people were pretty good with it. They moved quickly and started getting everything online very fast. The animation studios did a really good job with their employees or their artists. But one thing they found that was difficult was sort of creating that studio culture in an age where everybody was working from home. And I think what's important is, a lot of these studios will have things like, casual Fridays or beer Fridays or that kind of thing. And again, that's just something that's cool that happens at work. That's not your culture. It bleeds into culture, but it's not specifically what your studio culture is. Your studio culture is going to go back to your purpose again. It's all about starting with purpose. If you can't define that, you're going to have problems down the road. If you can't figure out what your purpose is, why you're doing what you do, you're going to just run into problems down the road with all the other aspects that come into managing a business. So 2020 was really, or at least so far, it's become this year where all businesses went virtual, right? It was all done essentially on Zoom or something like that. In some places, the entire workforce was put online, and you ended up having employees with little to no experience working from home, and then they were stuck with this battle of trying to manage their home life while it was intertwined with their work life. They had makeshift studios or makeshift offices kind of built right into the living room, and it became a bit of a problem. One of my favorite videos is online. This is from a bunch of years ago, but it was it's like a political expert of some kind was being interviewed by whatever news source was reporting it, and he had this lovely studio. It looked very professional. You didn't know where he was until at one point in the video, his like 2-year-old opened the door behind him and walked in during a live broadcast. And then right after that, that child's little sister walked in right behind him, and then followed the nanny, and the nanny was scrambling trying to get the kids out of there, and they were all trying to dodge the camera and whatnot. And unfortunately, the political expert or whoever it was that they were talking to didn't handle it as well as he could have, but it was sort of this slice into this guy's life that was really interesting to watch, and kind of how they tried to mitigate it and manage it. But it was super funny. But that's an example of how home life and work life have become intertwined, and we've been bombarded with like online meetings, like I talked about at the beginning. Tons of digital communications. There's just a flood of emails coming in, and all of that is sort of built on top of a series of like poor internet connections and lost signals and all that kind of stuff. And it's been a lot to manage for a lot of people. And we need to understand that, remote work isn't for everyone, but there's a few things that I've put together that will probably help things get a little bit easier. And that's going to help contribute to your workplace culture and providing that culture, your studio culture, out to all of your artists and employees and whatnot. And it takes time. It's not something that happens really quick, and it takes a ton of patience. One thing that the fitness industry and trainers have been really good at is creating these sort of cultural workplaces or cultural gyms that can be exported onto online systems as well. And so here's a few things that I put together that I thought would be important. Communication is absolutely vital. It's the most important structure that you can build your culture on. And you want to ensure that everyone that you're dealing with is comfortable sharing their concerns, so you don't end up on these sort of islands of silence where people are just out there being quiet because they don't want to disturb whatever's going on. You want to make sure that everyone has a time and place to voice their opinions on things. So something you might want to consider is to have frequent and consistent check-ins. Now, what that means for a studio would be that you're checking in with people, maybe at the beginning and end of the day, just seeing how things are. Maybe you're sending an email throughout the day. But one thing you don't want to be is like that helicopter parent who's constantly and consistently attacking the employees or trying to check in on their employees, asking how things are going. Are they okay with everything? You don't want to be that person. Instead, think of it like, if you sent your kids out to the backyard to play, you don't want to be constantly going out to the backyard asking them how they're doing. What are they doing? Are they having fun? That's going to get tiresome real quick. But what you might do is you might just kind of peek out the window every now and again, right? That's you just doing consistent check-ins, but you're not out there disrupting the play. And then, later on, after several hours or whenever it might be, maybe you bring them in and offer them some kind of snack or whatever it is. And then that gives you an opportunity to really chat with them. Another thing to consider is that communication is typically best when it's done voice to voice or face to face. And that's because a lot of nuances can be lost during a text message. Text is great, and it's great for like an immediate response. But at some point, you're going to want to schedule some sort of phone call or like a Skype call or something like that. And this is something I do with a lot of my premium end on the training side of things is to actually schedule out a face-to-face voice call, FaceTime or whatever it is, so that we can really discuss what some of the issues facing them or what the best strategy is moving forward. The other thing you're going to need is, really excellent communication skills. A lot of this is based on communication, and you need to be really good and precise at what you're saying. You need to understand that when you describe your expectations to whoever it is that you're talking to, that they're going to understand what you're talking about. So the first thing you need to do is enter into the conversation as if the person talking to you is going to tell you something you don't know. So you really want to be attentive and really come from a point of understanding so that you can reiterate what they're going to say and then give your advice on whatever it is they might be talking about. We talked about expectations, and you want to set strong expectations that you can follow up with. They need to be direct, and they need to be time frame driven. That's going to increase the likelihood of success. So when you're talking with someone, you want to say what the expectation is. For example, I need this shot done by Thursday. Are you able to do that? Are you able to deliver this shot by Thursday? If not, then we need to talk about that, and we need to come up with maybe a contingency plan or offset some of the stuff you are working on. So ask for confirmation, ask if they can do that, and then ask them if they're able to do that by that deadline. If the deadline is unrealistic for the person, they should speak up and say, no, I can't get it done by then, but I can get it done by Friday, for example, then great. The other thing you want to be is always available. So when you're dealing with virtual workplace environments, it's important to be as available as possible. So we kind of live in this world of or an era of real-time customer service, meaning you need to get back to people as soon as possible. If you wait, it's too late. If you wait, it's too late. I like that. You want to get back to people by the end of the day or as soon as possible, even if it's just to say, look, I'm working on this right now. I'm going to get to that by the end of the day. I'll give you an update before I'm done today. Even if it's that simple a communication. And in order to do that, you want to be able to use multiple forms of like technology to communicate. So like for me, with my training, with all of my clients, it's all done, like 90% of our communication is done through my app. And then 10% might be through, we'll also use, so the app allows us to do chat, video, text, images, all that kind of stuff. 90% of it's done through that. But at the same time, I'll also do emails, phone calls, text messages like SMS or whatever it's called. And then we'll also use like Facebook groups and LinkedIn events and meetups and that kind of thing. So you want to use technology to your advantage. Don't think of it as a hindrance. This right now, like we're living in a time that is the single greatest time to integrate your company's value, your company's cultures into your employees' daily lives. And that's something that's not being utilized enough from the business end in human resources. It's being used immensely in advertising, because if I can get you, or if a company can get you to share something or like something, like you see this on Facebook all the time. I'm always interested in looking at the ads that come up, and it'll say like so-and-so that I've recently talked with likes this advertisement or likes this group of whatever it is. I'm always interested in looking at that kind of stuff, because essentially what they're doing is word of mouth advertising. They're saying, this friend of yours really enjoyed this product, therefore we're hoping you're going to enjoy it as well. You're essentially giving them a word of mouth advertising or referral. And the likelihood of your friend purchasing that product is going to be extremely high. It's much higher than any and all other forms of advertising. So and by the way, the average person is spending like 6 to 8 hours a day on their phone. And you absolutely, as a business, as a company, as human resource management type people, need to find a way to be present on that device. And while you're doing that, the very last thing that you can focus on, or maybe not the last thing, but in terms of what I kind of laid out, would be to prioritize the relationships. So instead of creating these meeting times and going over whatever the important thing is of the day, go out of your way to form personal bonds with all of your remote employees. So it's kind of use those check-in times, like those times when you're contacting them in the morning or at the end of the day, to kind of ask about their families or their hobbies or their pets or something like that. And then use that as the foundation for the conversation. And then just sort of sprinkle in the stuff that you need done or the stuff that you want to check in with. So it's like, hey, how's your wife? How's this? How's the dog? Oh, great. You guys went out for a walk this afternoon. That's fantastic. Were you able to get whatever done? Yeah, great. Awesome. So these sort of conversations will allow those team meeting times to become more like the water cooler experience. That was another thing that these studio heads were trying to integrate back in, and it's such a silly thing. It's the easiest thing to do. You just have to make time for the relationships that you want to have with people, whether it's digital or in person. If you want to do it in person, you can. You just need to create a meetup, right? So I wasn't talking to them, but I was talking to somebody who was telling me about a person who was a little bit distraught over the idea that universities were going online. And they didn't like it because they missed the social aspect of it. And so my suggestion to them was, use whatever messaging function the school has in place and send a message out to all of the people in your class or all of the people in any sort of social structure that the university might have, and just say, would anybody be interested in meeting up at the local coffee shop or at such and such restaurant or at a park? Again, once we're able to have groups of larger than whatever it is right now. But that's something that you can do, and it's really easy to do. So make time for those relationships. Make time for the conversations that you need to have with people, and make sure that you're creating a personal connection to strengthen the relationship, and sprinkle in the things that you need done from them, right? It's kind of like baking a cake. You've got the recipe, there's things you have to do, but you want to make it fun as well, and kind of sprinkle in the sprinkles, I guess, whatever it is. Anyway, it's a few things I think that people could do, or that businesses could do, or that leaders could do to just maximize the amount of company culture that they're trying to display over the course of this sort of digital era. And the other thing you can do is just reallocate some of the marketing dollars that you've got to human resource. So try to keep the people you've got happy rather than trying to find new people. Anyway, that's going to be it for me today. Again, if you've got something that you'd like me to go over, my email's at the bottom there. Just send me a message, and I will be happy to answer whatever question you have, or it'll give me something to talk about on the next live stream. Other than that, I've got to get going. I've got a meeting happening here that I'm already late for, but that's okay. Just a couple of clicks away. So the nice thing is I don't have to actually go anywhere to get into the next meeting. So hope you all have a wonderful day. Take advantage of all the opportunities that are being brought to you, and I will see you next time.